Alright, hey, what's up, steelheaders and exhibit happy? I am excited to talk to you today about inflammation, and I am recording this video because, as most of you know, we had that live Zoom call scheduled, and due to extenuating circumstances, because you guys are so freaking awesome and busy, we weren't able to have that call. So I was committed to putting this into a video version that you guys can watch at your own convenience, okay? So we're going to talk about inflammation today. Very hot topic. Just in case, for those of you who may not know me, because I know that you guys sometimes hire new people, my name is Paul C. Tiarina. I'm a nutritional therapy practitioner, lifestyle and performance coach here in Las Vegas. I had my own health issues years ago. I was extremely overweight, 275 pounds, pre-diabetic, high blood pressure, was on different medications. That's what started me on my health journey. Moved here to Vegas in 2010, 2011. And completely revamped my entire health and decided to teach it to other people, and building a business around empowering others. And really what we do, I have an organization called the SHT, and that stands for Superhuman Transformation, and we are all about clarifying confusion and bringing confidence to the people that we work with, because as you know, there is so much information out there, and probably misinformation, about nutrition and sleep and supplementation and things like inflammation, that people have information overload and they don't know what to do. They don't know what the truth is. You just look at the nutrition realm. We have everything from plant-based to full-on animal-based and everything in between. And so that's what we do. We clarify the confusion. We bring confidence to the people that we work with, and we have healthy, happy, amazing people. We teach our foundations for health, which include food, real food, functional fitness, improving sleep patterns, having social connections with other people, having a mindfulness practice, and then also disconnecting and getting out in nature. And we think all that stuff is very important for optimal health. Today specifically, we're talking about inflammation, and this is what we're talking about: acute versus chronic, what contributes to chronic inflammation, and what we can do to prevent and mitigate chronic inflammation. So, this is one of those realms that everyone hears about this stuff all the time, and I think everyone's looking for a silver bullet to, prevent, stop, mitigate whatever inflammation they have. And you're going to find today that if you just commit to the basics of health, that is what you need to do to prevent and mitigate inflammation. Now, what is inflammation? Well, first of all, we have a certain amount of inflammation that we want. All right, acute inflammation happens when we have some pain or an injury or an illness. All right, and this is usually, you can tell because it's an inflamed area. It's usually red and swollen. We have some vasodilation or increased blood flow. And the reason for that is we're trying to get more nutrients there. We're trying to get some of the damage and toxins out of it. We also see some permeable tissues and vessels, because again, we're trying to get nutrients in and get toxins out. And then we tend to have some pain. And this is basically your body telling you to stay off of that area, stay away from that area. Now, this is very different from the inflammation that I think most of us are concerned with, which is chronic inflammation. This is when we have systemic inflammation that is not an acute response anymore. It's happening at a low level that you might not notice, but it becomes a part of your physiology. And this is something that's contributing to a lot of the chronic disease and degenerative disease that we experience these days. Now, how are you going to know if you have it? Well, there are blood tests and some blood work that you can get. But I think for most of us, if you have some chronic inflammation, you wouldn't be surprised if some of these things popped up. So I'd rather talk about like the subjective markers you can look for. First of all, if you have known symptoms that you experience from autoimmune conditions like joint pain, skin issues, digestive issues, allergic type symptoms, and those continue to flare up all the time in the context of doing what you think is right, that might be some chronic inflammation. If you have constant symptoms in general that don't seem to go away, if you have a lot of water retention, so remember we talked about increased blood flow and permeability, so sometimes water retention can be an indication of chronic inflammation. If you have unexplained constant stress, constant congestion and allergy type symptoms, if you feel tired and overtrained, or if you just in general look and feel inflamed. I remember back when I was at my worst, I just looked and felt inflamed. I was red all the time, and I just, this is just like, if you look, you probably describe me as inflamed. All right, so those are subjective things that might make you question whether you have some chronic inflammation or not. Now, what do we do about it? Well, what we see a lot out there, especially look at mainstream, Instagram ads and promotions and these little nuggets that you see from some of these hot shots out there, most people are looking for a silver bullet. They're looking for a little juice, something they can take, or a little pill that is an anti-inflammatory solution. And we would say that the question is not what can I take to reduce inflammation. The question should be what is the root cause contributing to the inflammation in the first place? Because if I can address that root cause, then that's taking away the cause, and I'm not going to have the inflammation in the first place. And by the way, there is no amount of juicing, celery juice, green juices, or turmeric or curcumin that you can take that will outdo or overcome an inflammatory toxic diet. That's the bottom line. People are doing the wrong thing when it comes to food, and they're stressing themselves out, they're not getting enough sleep, and they think they can take their curcumin or turmeric and fix things, and that's just not going to happen. All right, so let's talk about the causes first of chronic inflammation. The first one is going to be the diet, toxic foods. I mean, that's probably 90% of it. And within this toxic food realm, we have our list of foods that we recommend people avoid, but we're talking about a lot of refined carbohydrates, a lot of wheat-based products, unfortunately. I'm telling you right now, like wheat is one of those things everyone needs to nix. And then also industrial seed oils. All right, these are the highly processed, sometimes called vegetable oils, but there's nothing vegetable about it. You're not consuming broccoli oil. We're talking about things like canola oil, corn, soybean, vegetable, grapeseed, safflower, rice bran. I'd even throw sunflower oil in there unless it's a high oleic or high stearic. But these oils contribute more to inflammation, chronic disease, and degenerative disease, and diabetes. More to these things than we ever thought refined carbohydrates did. Okay, so I would say if there was anything that you would do, you'd want to address these toxic oils, and we'll talk about that here in a few. And then also in the standard American diet, most people are not getting enough omega-3 fatty acids, the long chain EPA, DHA, because they're being displaced with these toxic omega-6 fatty acids, which are basically coming from the things we just talked about: corn oil, canola oil, soybean oil, and vegetable oil. All right. Also, if you have, like I said before, poor other lifestyle factors that are not dialed in. So if you don't sleep very well, if you don't exercise, or if you exercise too much, because most people think the more exercise you can do, the better. Well, you do run into overtraining. And we see that a lot up here in our gym. If you have chronic stress and if you can't relax on a regular basis, this is also going to contribute to chronic inflammation. Now, the solutions are basically going back to the basics. So if what we're saying here is that those different things are the problems, then what we need to do is learn how to eat real food, have a fitness program, learn how to improve our sleep, both duration and quality, and probably implement some kind of a mindfulness practice. So let's talk about each one of those real briefly. When it comes to real food, of course, the SHT has their way of doing things, right? We have what we consider to be our definition of real food and things that you need to avoid. So we think that that's a great place to start when it comes to real food. But whatever your definition of real food is, it's going to be anti-inflammatory. All right. So there is the plant-based world that would say that red meat and fat are contributing to inflammation. And then there's the animal-based world that says the opposite. They said the majority of inflammation comes from the anti-nutrients and plant toxins found in plants. And then you have everything in between. So what's the solution there? The bottom line is real food is the answer. All right. So whether you are plant-based or a lot of plants and a little bit of meat, or if you're animal-based or a lot of meat and a little bit of plants, or somewhere in between that, that is anti-inflammatory. There is research that shows results and benefits of every end of the spectrum and everything in between. Okay. So I want you to understand and have confidence that real food is the answer. Plants are not the problem. Meat is not the problem. What's the problem is processed food. Okay. So whatever your definition of real food, the reason that's so beneficial is because in real food we get maximum nutrients that the body understands and recognizes. We get nutrient synergy because in real food we've got the nutrients interacting with each other in a way that's synergistic and the body understands, we've co-evolved with. We have food synergy, so as we're eating these different macro foods like meats and vegetables and fats and starches and fruits, those interact with each other in a synergistic way that the body understands. And by definition, real food is going to be minimal in toxins compared to processed food. And also real food has a vitality and life force that we inherit when we consume it. All right. So when we work with people, what we're trying to get them to do is move away from processed food and move towards better processed food made with better ingredients. and ultimately get to the point to where they are eating 100% fresh real food most of the time. All right. So one thing that we can get people to do is just understand what are those ingredients that we're trying to avoid and what can we replace them with. We think a really good starting place is to swap out your toxic fats for traditional fats. All right. So toxic fats are going to be the things that we mentioned before, all the fake butters and spreads, Benecol, Earth Balance, I can't believe it's not butter, hydrogenated, partially hydrogenated margarine, Crisco, and then the things like corn oil, canola oil, soybean oil, vegetable oil, safflower rice bran. Okay. So now to replace those with traditional fats, depending on what you believe in as far as real food, we recommend things like real butter. We think real butter is extremely helpful, but if you're plant-based, not animal-based, then you can do coconut oil and olive oil. If you're animal-based, we love lard and tallow and the other animal fats. We think they're extremely helpful. But just swapping those toxic processed fats out for the right fats is going to be extremely helpful. This also means, though, that you have to avoid eating out most of the time, because most foods cooked in restaurants are going to be cooked in canola oil or soybean oil or a blend of those two. And it's extremely toxic. And we went to a restaurant the other day and we asked if we could have our eggs cooked in butter, and they didn't have any butter. All they had was canola oil, So, and that's where a big part of people that are sick and inflamed and have all these issues are getting their doses of these toxic fats and oils is just eating out. All right, so as a bonus, I'm including our quality and cooking with fats and oils page, which tells you which fats are the best, which ones are the best for cooking, which ones are the best for not cooking, and which ones you definitely want to consume rarely, if at all. Okay, so a little bonus info thing that I'm going to give you guys. And then also, we need to get small amounts of the omega-3 fatty acids. These are the things that we hear about in mainstream news and stuff that are beneficial. These are things like EPA and DHA. And we recommend getting this from a pristine virgin cod liver, because cod liver oil is not fish oil, it's liver oil. It has other nutrients associated with it. It's a little bit more holistic and less processed and less denatured. That's a great place to get EPA and DHA. If you're plant-based, it's really hard to get EPA and DHA, although there are some algal oils out there that you could try to experiment with. And then also we recommend for the lifestyle factors to improve your sleep, duration, and quality. There's a few things that we need. We need consistency with our routines to set circadian rhythms, which means that we need to get to bed at the same time and wake up at the same time almost every day. If you're one of these people that Monday through Friday you have a different schedule and on the weekends you sleep in, that's not very good for circadian rhythms, because to set a rhythm, you have to have consistency. So figure out what your best bedtime and rise time is, and give yourself at least 7 hours of sleep, ideally up to 8 or 9, and then just try to be consistent with it. Like now I'm so set with my own personal circadian rhythms that even on the weekends, if I try to sleep in, I still wake up at 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning, because that's just what I'm used to, and I love it. I love being a morning person, getting up and watching the sunrise and having my coffee. Like, it's the best thing in the world. Another thing that we can do to improve sleep duration and quality is mimic the day during the day. So as we're out and about during the day, we need to get some of the brightness from the sun, because that tells us what time of day it is. It tells our body when to secrete cortisol, when to secrete melatonin. We need at least 30 minutes of being outside most days. And then in the evening, you want the opposite. When the sun goes down, you get close to your bedtime, you want to turn off all your electronics and stay off your phone and computer and television to the best of your abilities. And definitely when you go to sleep, you want to make your bed an electronic-free zone. You don't want your phone right next to you. You don't want to be wearing a bunch of stuff. You don't want your lamps and things next to you, because all that electric interference messes with people's sleep. Okay? So when it comes to exercise, I would say just commit to a routine that you can stick to, right? We need movement most days. I am a huge fan of walking in the morning by yourself. I call it a solitary walk. On that solitary walk, you have time with your own mind. You can think about what you got going on for your day and your life. You can think really positive thoughts. It's very open and creative. Don't take your cell phone, or if you do, put it in airplane mode. A walk in the morning and a walk in the evening is a great start. You can do that every single day. And then, maybe commit to a dedicated group exercise program. Group programs are really great because there's accountability. They tend to be a little bit more fun. But just make sure that you're not working out every day. You got to factor in rest. We tell most of our people here 4 days a week is optimal. 5 days is the max. And we don't want to go over 5 days a week of intense workouts, right? All right, now to mitigate stress, for meditation and mindfulness, we just recommend starting with some meditation, and we recommend true meditation, all right? So I have some really good videos where I take people through some guided meditation. It's the perfect blend of guided plus your own practice, and we talk a little bit about what meditation is and what's it for. But there's also some really solid apps out there that we like. I like Sam Harris's Waking Up. Calm is a good one. Headspace is a good one. I also like 10% Happier. Each one of these give you about a 10-minute daily guided meditation, and it really cultivates the skill that we're looking for when we meditate. All right. Also, something I've found to be extremely beneficial is plan and look forward to days off and vacations. I used to never do this, and now that I'm with someone, I'm in love with her, she kind of forces me to sit down and plan at least once a quarter, once every couple of months. We're looking at some place to go or do, and we are always excited for that. You know, we got our little weekend coming up, and then when we go out, we fully commit to it. We try not to do any work when we're there, and it really makes a big difference, getting out and disconnecting and looking forward to these little vacations. All right. Now, it's difficult to talk about inflammation without talking about cortisol, so let's just talk a little bit about cortisol. Now, cortisol is necessary because we use it as an emergency stress response, right? So when we secrete cortisol, we mobilize energy, but also first thing in the morning when we wake up, if we have really good circadian rhythms, we have a cortisol spike, and that is synonymous with the body trying to get energy for the day and get us moving a little bit, right? So when we wake up first thing in the morning, we should have a cortisol spike that then tapers off as we go throughout the rest of the day. And then in the evening, we should have a spike in melatonin, which cannot happen if we have cortisol flowing through our system, right? So those are antagonists to each other. So the main contributors to poor cortisol patterns are going to be high sugar, poor sleep, and then constant stress. So again, we mentioned before, our goal is to move people away from crap food to things made with better ingredients, and ultimately to eating 100% real food. Within this realm of eating better things and real food, we just have a few basic focuses. Eat real food, moderate your carbohydrates or be strategic with your carbohydrates, and then allow periods of space and not eating. So the way that carbohydrates contribute to cortisol is that if I'm eating a lot of carbohydrates throughout the day, I have a big spike in energy from it, and then I have a big drop in energy, and to compensate for that drop, my body's going to secrete a little cortisol. And so the way that we mitigate that is, number one, we have carbohydrates from real food sources only. We don't have like donuts and stuff like that. We have sweet potatoes and yams and rice and other starchy things, plantains and cassava. And we also have fruit, which is a real food source of sugar, a little bit of honey or something like that. So our carbohydrates come from real food, and we just don't do a lot of them. All right, we'd say about a fistful of starch in a day and a fistful of fruit in a day. And if you stick to that, you're moderating your amounts, and the real food sources of carbs are different from refined carbohydrates. That by itself is going to really help with mitigating excess cortisol spikes. And then also we recommend don't snack all the time. If you're grazing all day, then you're also contributing to these bumps in blood sugar and dips. And what we want is some space in between our meals so the body can actually learn how to do things on its own. All right. When it comes to circadian rhythms, we already talked about to improve sleep patterns. This also helps with your cortisol and melatonin secretion, consistency with routines, and making sure that you're mimicking the day during the day and mimicking the night during the night. It's as simple as that, right? There's things that you can do. You can brighten up your home. You can go for an outdoor walk in the midday, but the bottom line is we just want to align ourselves with the biological rhythms of the earth. We want to have consistent bed and rise times, and we want to make sure that when it's daylight outside, we get outside. When it's nighttime, we're not watching freaking Commando and Terminator with surround sound and blasting ourselves with all the stimulus, because that's going to mess up your sleep patterns, okay? And then finally, again, another big plug for meditation and mindfulness, because when it comes to cortisol, the calmer and cooler we are, the less likely it is that we're having unnecessary spikes in cortisol, because again, in response to stress, my body's going to secrete cortisol as well, right? So minimizing carbohydrates, is going to minimize cortisol spikes. Getting good sleep is going to minimize cortisol imbalances, and then also making sure that you're less stressed by meditating is also going to contribute to less cortisol spikes, okay? So I think that's everything I wanted to say about inflammation and cortisol, really. It comes back to the basics, and maybe it's just another argument or plug or some leverage for you to dial in real food and sleep and fitness and get a mindfulness practice going, but there's no superfood freaking silver bullet that you can take to mitigate inflammation. You have to get the basics dialed in first, okay? I just want to tell y'all too about our little community. We have an amazing online community of support. It's called SuperHumans United. I'm going to give you guys a link to it. You can get a free trial into it. Our big purpose there is that we bring together people who for most of their lives have been lost and confused, or at least unsure when it comes to a bunch of these different health topics. And we bring these people together to learn health concepts, put those concepts into practice, and support each other throughout the entire process. And so we basically bring confidence and clarity to those seeking the truth about this stuff so that we can all be happy and healthy and live freaking amazing lives. So if you'd like to look at what that's about, please feel free to check out our little video that I'll include here. And if you have any questions whatsoever about inflammation, cortisol, sleep, nutrition, fitness, I mean, you name it, if it's in the holistic health realm, we're working with it. Please feel free to reach out to me because I am an open book and I am here to serve. I'm here to help. And I want to see people do better and get better. Okay. So again, it's always an honor and pleasure to work with you guys. I love Steelheaders. I love Steelhead and Exhibit Happy. Thank you everyone for chiming in and tuning in, and we will talk to you guys soon. All right.